Hello and welcome to this very special lesson today. And the reason for why the lesson is special is because we're finally gonna get the product that you have now been designing and soon will be manufacturing into your customers' hands. And this step is extra important to get right because you will have to put down money for the tooling and for the first purchase order. So you better have everything aligned before you do that. And because of that, we will go through the various important things that you need to consider as you put down this first order and start shipping products to your customers. So let's get started. And the very first thing that you will need is to have a manufacturing contract with all of your suppliers. And apart from that, you will also need a NNN agreement, and this is usually already baked into the manufacturing contract, but do double check that it's there. And then for the actual purchase order, you will need to specify several things. And the first is the price, of course. The second is the international commerce terms. And if you have not already seen the chapter on that, the Incoterms chapter, then please go ahead and do that before continuing with this lesson. Next up, you will also need to specify the order quantity and then the delivery date, of course. And a standard payment setup for manufacturing in China is to pay 30% upfront and then 70% upon finishing production. And there are other types of payment setups out there like 50-50 and 0-100, so you pay everything upfront, but this is less commonly seen. Then if you are shipping abroad, you will also need to think about whether you want to do it with air freight or sea freight. And the difference between these two is, as you can expect, that air freight is faster but more costly, and then sea freight is cheaper but takes a long time. Another consideration when selecting between these two is whether or not your product has a larger battery inside of it. Because if it has a large battery, then there are some regulations that will apply to air freight, which might make sea freight a better choice. Then, apart from the shipping order and the purchasing terms, you will also need to think about who will do the quality inspection. And here, you should definitely not count on the factory itself doing the quality inspection because obviously they will be very biased, and if there is an issue in the production line, it is very likely that they will simply not tell you about it and ship this product to not lose money. And I would suggest that you ask your sourcing agent if quality inspection is a service that they offer, because very likely it is. And also, it is important that you think of quality inspection not just like something that you do after the parts have been manufactured, but something that is actually best done before and during as well. Before, you need to do a quality inspection to assure that the factory has the capabilities that it says it does and is able to actually manufacture in the volumes that you want it to. And during, so that you are able to catch defects early on. Because if you wait for the factory to produce, let's say, 2,000 units of your product, and then you see that there is an issue with the parts, then the factory is very likely to try to avoid redoing those 2,000 units, because obviously they would lose a lot of money doing that. And because of that, if you're able to actually catch the issue during manufacturing, it is much easier to negotiate with the factory and have them redo some of the parts. And once you have considered the manufacturing contracts, the NNN agreements, the purchase orders, and everything else that we have discussed up until now, you also need to think about the delivery method. And here there are two fundamental different choices that you have. And the first is to ship in bulk and then to have a third-party delivery firm redistribute these products to the customers. And the second is to keep your stock inside of China or wherever you are manufacturing your product and then drop ship it out of that country. And if you plan on selling through Amazon, then the most logical choice will most likely be their FBA program fulfilled by Amazon, where you can simply bulk ship into their warehouses and they will handle the delivery. However, if you are planning to sell outside of Amazon, then the choice between drop shipping and bulk shipping and then third-party fulfillment becomes a little bit more nuanced and complicated. For example, if you have a customer base that is very spread out across all of the world, then it could be difficult to do bulk shipping and then third-party fulfillment because you will need to have so many different fulfillment centers to have fast shipping times for your customers. Also, in some cases, the third-party fulfillment and bulk shipping could result in double taxation. And to give an example of this, let's imagine that you have a fulfillment center in US where the majority of your customers are located, but that you get one customer from Europe. Well, in that case, you are first paying the import tax to ship your products from China to your fulfillment center in US, and then you are paying a second import tax to ship from US to Europe. And if we choose dropshipping instead, we avoid this problem by only shipping one time directly from the source of manufacturing. The largest downside of dropshipping, I would say, are the shipping times, because now with Amazon Prime, many people have been spoiled and expect 1 or 2 day delivery, and with dropshipping that's simply unfeasible. The best you can get with dropshipping is about 5 days, but that costs a lot. For the margin that most consumer products provides, a more reasonable shipping time for dropshipping products would land around 15 days for Europe and North America, and then perhaps a little bit less than that for countries located closer to China. But this of course assumes that we are manufacturing in China and not some other place. And by the way, I do realize that when I'm mentioning dropshipping, some of you might actually be cringing because that word, it has gotten some very bad associations recently, because people associate dropshipping with simply buying a cheap thing on AliExpress and then selling it for a huge markup on a personal website. But this is not at all what dropshipping is about. Dropshipping, it's nothing more than a fulfillment method, and it might be good for your business, it might be bad for your business, but know that there is a huge amount of companies, very serious and large companies, that use this day to day to provide a quality product to their customers. And at this point, where you have set up all of the legal paperwork, you have decided exactly who is going to do the quality assurance, you have selected all of your suppliers, you know how you're going to get your products from your suppliers to your customers, then you are ready to start manufacturing a nice number of units each month. And another thing that you can start thinking about and working on when you have steady sales numbers is to create redundancy in your supply chain. And what I mean with that is that you have backup factories for the most vulnerable parts of your supply chain, so that if something happens with your main factory, your production does not stop and you do not take a massive loss in sales. And there are a million of different things that could happen that require you to have additional factories. And one simple thing is that your sales numbers could grow so large that one factory is no longer enough to manage all of your part production. Another thing that could happen is that one of your crucial factories goes into bankruptcy or needs to shut down temporarily for one reason or another. Surprisingly, actually the most common reason for shutting down factories is that the government tells them to do so. So during the very hot summer months, it's possible that the government will mandate that the factory has to shut down, and this will of course mean that you cannot produce any new products and your stock will be depleted. If you are at a point where you feel it's worth to delve into the redundancy of your supply chain, then I would suggest that you start with your most complex parts first. So for example, if you're creating a luggage and you have some very specific parts which can only be produced by a luggage factory, then you should create redundancy for those parts first before creating redundancy for more easily obtained components such as luggage wheels or handles. And for this lesson, I actually don't have any tasks, because I think at this point it's very clear where you are headed. You already have your sourcing agent, you have your design, everything is set up, and now it's time to place that order. It's time to start manufacturing your product and start selling it. And this is an extremely exciting time, because this is where you get to reap the fruits of all of this effort that we have gone through. So I wish you good luck, and I'll see you in the next lesson.